The management plan, chapter 3, is where our discussion begins today. And let's start with this thought process. Management plans, and we've talked a little bit about leadership and management and how we're going to approach them in this course. But management plans tend to be issue driven or focused on issues that were important when the plan was prepared. So keep that in mind as you think about the differences between management and management planning and plans versus business, marketing, or diversity plans or some other type of planning. So where might you typically see the use of management plans? Education institutions, business units or divisions of businesses, government agencies that have a risk management component, land or water agencies. 21st century forward thinkers really take into play management plans. And then Parks and Rec, you might see management plans put into place. So that gives you a little bit more of the framework. So let's go down the management plan path and learn as much as we can about the structure, how it's put together, and how it can be beneficial. The management plan structure that we kind of speak to, and there are various ways to look at this, kind of starts with an executive summary, a description of the business or the company, a SWOT, and then a strategy that's developed from the SWOT, your management programs that are put into place, the financials, and then the implementation and assessment. So that's the framework. Again, you can research this, and there's various frameworks for management plans. We just like to take this particular framework because management plans are functions of business planning. So the management plan is really a roadmap to kind of crystallize the ideas for the person or people that are originating it. It's bridging a gap between these ideas that you're going to manage and reality. It's a work in progress, so you never really finish it. It can be used as a tool to help boost or raise internal and external interest. And then it's an approach to exploit some of the kind of the opportunities, but it also helps us fuse the differences between leadership, which is visionary, and management, which is more tactical. So that's an important element of the management plan itself. The executive summary that we talked about, written at the end of the plan, placed at the beginning, the company description, which describes the assets, the SWOT, which really speaks to the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The strategy we build is the roadmap or outline for the plan and its goals. And then the most important piece of the management plan are those programs that are specifically developed for managerial purposes. Finances, how we're going to support it from a financial standpoint with projections of earnings, keeping costs in check, and or doing both. Implementation and how we're going to execute the plan, and then last but not least, the assessment, whether or not we're on the right path with or track with our management plan, and if not, how we're going to make changes. So let's look at each of these components. But before we do, let's talk about the plan and how we start the thought process in building a management plan. So consider some of the components of your business or your entity or your institution, and what products and services are offered that you would manage. Who is the audience that is receiving this information? What's the strategy? How are you incorporating the competitive aspect, whether it's serious or severe to your organization or not? And then how are you going to finance it? In today's terms, when you build a management plan, we like to say that if you think you need $100,000, you may need 5, 6, or even up to 7 times that amount in order to effectively manage that plan and get it executed. The executive summary, looking at the concept of the organization you're operating within, its mission statement, describing the organization, your strategy, your programs, your finances, your implementation. So it is exactly that. It is a snapshot. It's a summarization of your plan in its totality. So think in terms of a page or two in order to describe your executive summary and what you're doing. The company description really gets into vision. So this is where you might talk a little bit about the leadership aspect of what you're going to do for the next 3 to 5 years. And then an industry description. Who are the key contributors in your organization and outside of it? What assets do you have? How are you going to finance your managerial effort? What is the growth in your organization? And then if there's a name that's applicable, what are you calling that? The SWOT takes a real good look at our strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats, but more importantly, how are we going to manage the analysis? So this is where our greatest potential is from a managerial standpoint in our organization. And we use critical thinking and analytical skills in order to help us do that. A little bit about the market and its overview and any anticipated changes that we would see. And again, when we speak to those changes, they're from a management standpoint and how we're going to manage the plan, not so much just changes from a business standpoint. Strategy takes on a competitive, technological, employee, marketing, and operational focus. And so the idea here is to be able to pull all these entities together and figure out how are we going to manage effectively the things that we say we're going to do. So explain what role these different components will take in your management plan, and then who, what, why, when, where, and how will we manage those particular focus components. And of course, the most significant piece is this second one here. When we look at programs and how we pull our programs together, the management aspect asks us to look at it from a sustainability and a financially sound perspective. When we implement, what is it that we will do that we can sustain and we can support financially and then remain competitive in the way of our products, services, and offerings? So think about that when you pull together the management plan. If the plan doesn't have those elements in it, then it's probably going to not be sufficient for you to be able to sustain things in the long run. The financials, just a snapshot that speaks to, this is a pro forma, a 9-month projection and pro forma that speaks to revenues and expenses, and then the difference between those as to whether or not we're netting a profit. But the idea here again is looking at how we manage these components more than anything else. And then implementation. What actionable steps are we going to take based upon the tactics we pull together and the policies we put in place that will help us obtain our short-term and our long-term goals? So they're time sensitive. There's a specificity about the detail of the work we're doing. Who are the participants and what functional tactical areas are we going to rely on? Marketing, finance, human relations, etc. That's why the management aspect of implementation is so important. It encompasses just about everything before we actually go out and execute or take those actionable steps with our management plan. And then last but not least, we look at assessment. So we come back and we determine how well have we done. So we've measured our strategy to tactical transition. Was it in alignment with our goals overall? And how did we integrate that aspect of it if it was in alignment? So the systems, the processes, the regulatory aspects, policies and procedures, were all of those components at play, and did we make sure that we did a pretty good job of actually implementing our plan? So assessment becomes important because a lot of times we have to recalibrate or look at things differently to move forward when we're looking at assessment. So here are some definitions that might be beneficial for you, looking at executive summary, also taking a look at strategy, and then last but not least, taking a look at financials. So what did we learn today? Well, we learned that there's a structure for the management plan. We should have learned and had our thought process opened up a little bit about the fact that it's much more difficult to manage the plan and its components than we might have thought about before. And then hopefully we had a little bit of learning in regard to what are some of the skills we might need, and we'll talk about those later on in another chapter in order to help us effectively manage our management plan and our people and resources and task. So here is your thought for the day. If what you did yesterday seems big, you haven't done anything today.